I hope you like sifting through data because that's what we're going to do in this video. It's 9:53 p.m., getting in some deep work in the evening, about to go to bed, go to work tomorrow. Welcome in traders. This is not me telling you what to do. This is not me encouraging you to trade. This is me sharing because I'm going to learn better by doing that. Although I will tell you, if you want advice, in my opinion, to be in the elite of traders, the top 1% who makes a lot of money, the top 5% who are even profitable, then 90% of your time should be spent on data gathering, sorting, and looking at past price action, and 10% of less of your time should be spent on trading the current charts. And I think you'll find that to be true of, it's not universally true, but most of the greatest traders, the elites, spend a lot of time journaling, a lot of time going over reviewing, and most of the not good traders spend all their time just glued to the chart, 1 minute, 5 minute, trade, trade, trade. So set that aside. Let's get some data which can give us some really useful information. So what are we looking at here? So I wanted to get information on tradable pivots, how much daily high and low levels are run before the pivot ends. In other words, if we have an up thrust like a rally, how often does it happen? How long does it last? How much liquidity does it take in terms of daily highs and lows being run? How many levels are run on that final day of the pivot reversal? How many new levels are run, in other words, inside liquidity that's engineered and is just farmed, and how many old levels are run, in other words, if we make a run up to a higher high and start to take old highs, or we run down to a lower low and start to take old lows. And then the total daily levels run. And what this can do for us is it can inform us of when it's too early to take a trade, whether we should be looking for longs or shorts, and yeah, that's really what it's for. And some ideas for how to enter on that final pivot day. Now, I only have a sample size so far of 24, which ideally I would like to have 50 or 100, but that's what I have, and it's the end of the night. And we're going to take a look at this. Now, before we sift in the data, I want to kind of show you what I'm talking about. We're going to look into the data, and then we're going to go look at a couple outliers. So the idea is we're in an up thrust right now. Let's ignore the up thrust because we don't know if it's over or not. We're looking at the daily chart of Bitcoin. Let's zoom out so you can see where we are. Okay, we're down here. There was a pivot high on the 27th and there's a pivot low on the 30th. Okay, so we're going to log the pivot low on the 30th is the first thing I have on here, 12:30. The pivot high is actually up here, was on the 20th. So it ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 levels, it looks like. I think I logged it slightly wrong. One of them was old, actually, because it took this low here. No, it would have had to take this low, so that's correct. All it did was it generated 10 days of liquidity. It took it all. It didn't take any old liquidity, right? Before the next move up. Then here's a pivot high right here. Okay, it only took 2 days of liquidity. That one's sort of unique, but we logged that. Then we have a pivot low here. This is the reversal day. The reversal day, we took out 3 lows on this reversal day. Okay, we ran here's a pivot low. We ran 1, 2, 3, 4 newly generated lows, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 old levels. So there may be some errors in my data, but this is just to inform us. So this is what we're looking at. I'll do one more for example. There was a pivot high on the 14th of December. Let me make sure my audio is on. Audio is on. There's a pivot high on the 14th of December. The final day we ran one level. on that move from a tradable pivot low, which I would say is here, we took 2 old levels and we ran 7 new levels. 1, 2, 3. This is the last tradable high, so 1. Well, I want to go from the low here, but we have to go from the tradable high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now let's go back to the data. What do we see? First of all, the days between pivots are about 4 days between a pivot. So that also means that if we're only trading pivot lows and highs, then, which is mostly what I'm trying to do, there's a trade opportunity every 4 days, which is about twice a week, which is consistent with my data. If I trade both Bitcoin and ETH, then there's twice as many. I get 3 to 4 trades a week. If you wanted to trade a different setup or you wanted to trade retracements, you could do things like getting on board. If you don't get in the first pivot, you could wait for a retracement. So, I mean, there may be other other trades, but that's important to know. The last day often runs 2 levels, and every time it runs 1, that was what my old system 1.0, was trying to catch, 1 or 2. But you can see that the move tends to, not always, but the last day it tends to sort of stall out and just take 1 or 2 levels. So, like, catching the last move is oftentimes not hard because the volatility dies out. There's times where the final day runs 7 levels, or it happens, or 4, but usually it's just 1 or 2, which makes it not that hard to catch tops and bottoms. I would argue it's not that hard to catch tops and bottoms because as the trend exhausts, the final day is not very volatile. Okay, so this is something that really interested me, is that the average old levels run is 1.6, but the median is 0, which means most of the time, like, we're trading inside of some old structure. We're not making it higher. Well, okay, we may make a higher high, but we're not necessarily cutting into old liquidity beyond that. But most of the time we're just farming, because how did I count that? I counted, typically I would count, I might need to go back and redefine that. But typically it was, if we take the old, yeah, the old low should be an old level. So my data might not be perfect. However, what we can see is typically we're not taking a lot of old liquidity. Typically we're just farming, like, in here we have a high and a low, and like we're just farming, everybody stops. They just go short, nothing happens, they get stopped out. So that's quite interesting to me. That, yeah, the amount of old levels run, like, most of the time it trades inside. Like, say from this high to this high, this area. If we look left, nothing old was taken in here. It was all trading in this old gap. So all this activity was newly farmed liquidity that was taken, no old liquidity. And we can see from the data that the majority of a pivot is on new liquidity. And most of the time it trades inside. But when it trades outside, it trades big outside, right? Like, it goes on these runs where it takes 6, 6, 5, 5. Like, what is the mode of this? Okay, the median is 0, but after that, what is it? Like, it goes from 0 to 5. 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 5s and 2 6s and 3 3s, right? So it either trades inside or it runs a lot. Most of the time it trades inside or just takes, yeah, basically old liquidity or new liquidity. Now the last thing I have is total daily levels run. You can see it varies a lot, but the average and median are both around 6 and 7. So that can tell us, for instance, if we go to current price action, let's go to current price action. Current price action, we had this up thrust and we took out one old high right here and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no, sorry, from the low here. From the low, we took out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've taken out 6 levels and one old level. This is exhausted. We shouldn't be looking for continuation longs. We also should not be looking for bottom longs because it needs to run at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels ideally, right? So this tells us we should be looking for shorts up here and longs down here. So this is helpful, right? This is really valuable data. Um, so that's the current situation. Like it would have maybe been good to be short here. We'll see if that is the pivot high. We don't know yet until we clear down a bit further. Um, I mean, it might even be a pivot. I guess that's a pivot high because possibly because price might even cut down and we're going to find out later. Don't know, but I know that it makes sense to look for shorts up here and longs down here based on this data. It was suggested to take a long at 16.7. Doesn't make sense to take a long at 16.7 because there's only 1 or 2 levels being run. It needs to be at least 4, ideally 6 or 7 or more, right? Okay, now the last thing we're going to do before I pack it in is I want to look at the outliers. Like, where did we run 16 levels on the 4th? 12, 4. 16 levels. What? 12, 4, 22. There's a top right here. Yeah. Okay. Something's not right here. It should be on the 5th. Yeah. Look how much liquidity we took. And a lot of it was old. Although what's interesting about this one is while it was a pivot high, the short wasn't that good. It was okay. It was an okay short, but compared to this. Let's look at some more like deviant ones. Uh, I want ones that maybe ran a lot of. So 16, let's look at the 14 and the other 14, and then I want to look at ones that ran a lot of levels on the final day. 14 on 10, 13. 10, 13. This one did make a great short. Although that said, it's hard to catch because there's so many. And the better entry was this. I'm not going to go into why, but it's a lot easier. It just moves so fast. I'm not going to look at the exact setup, but it was much easier to enter on this day, which I included as a tradable pivot in the sample. Now let's look where else. There's 14 on this one, 9/21, September 21. This move. It took a lot of liquidity. That said, where is it? I'm going to define that as an old level. That's going to be more useful to my thinking. I need to maybe go back through and look at that, but it's almost all like we went up and down. The down move was nothing, right? Like we went right back to where we were. We didn't really go lower and we just farmed. All we did was farmed. We didn't take any old levels. other than the previous low. So that's quite interesting. 27th, did we just look at that one? I gotta really need to get off my feet. 1027. Yeah, this one, well, 1013 is quite interesting too. Took 7 on the final day, ended up being a significant bottom. You don't necessarily need to enter there, you look for entry later though. Then we had 7 on the 27th of October. I don't think that's right. It's on the 27th of September. So this one. This high took out 7 on one day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that high ended up getting taken like a week later. So that actually wasn't a significant high. So I'm not sure if there's anything to learn from that other than like the amount of liquidity taken on the pivot high day doesn't necessarily make it an important day. Actually, it's just farming. But it tells us one is too early and so on. Okay, that's it for the night. Hope you find it useful and helpful. Appreciate you, and let's get it. Peace.